I'm on a mission to watch every single Katharine Hepburn film, which is quite a mission because there are quite a lot of them. And Stage Door really stood out to me as one that sounded quite interesting. And that's exactly what it delivered. It is a quite interesting film. I didn't absolutely adore it. I did like Katharine Hepburn's character, and I'll talk about her in a moment. All of the performances were good, and it's got a really strong cast, but I feel like the narrative could have been doing with a little bit more substance. This was released originally in 1937, directed by Gregory Lacava. The screenplay is written by Maury Riskind and Anthony Valier, and it's based on the play by Edna Ferber. Now, I have never seen the play, of course. If you've seen it, I'd love to know how it compares, what creative licenses were taken with adapting it for film. Would I see it on stage? I mean, maybe, if it was cheap or if the timing was convenient, but I'm not thinking this is one that I absolutely have to see on stage. So it's about this this boarding house where all of the girls live. All of the girls who live there are actresses. The boarding house is run by an older actress who we get the impression doesn't act that much nowadays, but may one day go into coaching younger girls about acting. And the latest woman to request room in this boarding house is Terry Randall, who's Katharine Hepburn's character. And she's definitely a cat among the pigeons because she's very... First of all, she comes from wealth. Her family is well off. And she's very well dressed, very well spoken, as is typically the case with a Katharine Hepburn character. And she takes her craft very seriously. She would rather do Shakespearean performances than, comedic skits, which is what the rest of the girls boarding there seem to prefer. And that's about it. Not much happens. Certainly in the first half of the film, it's largely just about setting up the characters, but because there are so many characters, it doesn't ever seem boring. It's not gripping, it's not thrilling, but it's engaging still. And I think that's because at any one time there's a lot going on. And it's about them trying to find ways to find their feet, about the things that they care about in the industry, and also about giving Terry a chance for other people to see different sides to her. Because to start off with, the other girls in the house are very much like, no, you are not like us, you're a very different individual. But we start to see sides of her that actually is very caring. And yes, she might think that she takes her craft more serious than anybody else does, but she's definitely got a kind side to her, a kind side. And I think as the other characters develop around her, we get a chance to see more of her as well. And honestly, there are a few other things that happen in the second half that I obviously don't want to go into too much detail about. Anything that's set in the theatre, when we get to see performances on stage, there are not as many of them as I would have expected, given the narrative. But whenever we do see them, especially the tap dancing, I love the tap dancing. If I could click my fingers and have any skill, it would be to be a tap dancer. I love the sound of it. And the dances as well, of course. So the choreography is very good, but also quite, minimal from what you'd expect. It's definitely more character-driven than it is narrative-driven, and we see certain characters coming more closely together. Jean Maitland, played by Ginger Rogers, is the one who spends the most time with Terry because they end up sharing a room, and we definitely have very opposing personalities who can actually come together in ways that are perhaps unexpected. Katharine Hepburn and Ginger Rogers have a really good on-screen chemistry, and that's always nice to see. Would I recommend the film? Yes, if you like classic cinema. This is never going to be a film that I would say everybody has to watch. It's probably not one of Katharine Hepburn's best from what I've seen, but I do have quite a few to watch because she has. In fact, I'll have a look just now to see how many IMDb say she's done. But of all of the Katharine Hepburn films I've seen, I'd say it's probably one of the weakest, but she has done some amazing films. There are 53 credits to her name. I've seen maybe 10 at the most. So I don't know if this is particularly typical of her kind of films, or if it's just a one-off as not having the best narrative, but we'll see. It's worth watching if there's something about it that makes you want to watch it, but I'm not going to say you absolutely have to rush to see it. Stage Door is not a bad film. It was, as I said, quite interesting.